welcome to Joseph's Model Railway and Toy Room. They're in another room, sorry. Thank you so much for joining me today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You don't need to like, follow, or subscribe to any of the videos that I put out there. Just put them out there where I can. Have a holy jolly great time doing so. Now, in this video, boring. We are talking about keyboards. How much more bored can you get? Well, it's just a semi sort of swift summary on keyboards in 2025. What's working for me, what's not working for me, with a surprise winner, I think, at the end of it. I thought you might like to just join me on this pilgrimage, in the sense that keyboards are something I take very, very personally. Just like trying to find your favorite pair of shoes or something like that. You may search and search all your life to find something, and sometimes what you've loved the most has been in front of you forever. Well, in this instance, things change with your life. People come into your life, some people leave your life, circumstances change, you might have to move house, this happens, that breaks down, they don't make this anymore. So I just wanted to talk to you really quickly about keyboards, because for anyone that's watching the video, there's at least 50% of you that probably end up using a computer. You may not be aware that one of the greatest keyboards out there is not one you're just going to find everywhere. So in which case, that's what we're going to talk about. We'll try and keep it to the point as much as I can on this one, but there are just a few prerequisites you should know about me and how I use it. First of all, I really don't care for wireless operation on a lot of things. If I can pay the extra, up to and including air conditioning, oh, we'll give you a remote control. I'll pay the extra to make sure everything gets hardwired. The same thing with my computer. I prefer a wired mouse and a wired keyboard. The computer's sitting there, it's not going anywhere. It doesn't bother me if there's a little cord. I never have to worry about changing batteries, and I never have to worry about any problems that could be affecting it to do with the transceiver or losing it or something else happening, an incompatible driver or whatever else could happen in the wonderful technology world. So this video, I just want to look at some key things. So again, for me, a keyboard, I want a wired keyboard. Illumination, I really don't care about illumination at all. And most importantly, you all know I always carry an Artline 0.4mm felt tip pen. This is my pen of choice. So my pen, I love to always have just above me on a keyboard. It's just the way I do business and the way I live my life. As a result though, that's what this video is all about. So let's dive in now to my little collection and see what works for me and what doesn't work for me and why. And really quickly, when I am actually using a cell phone or mobile phone or what have you, and or using Microsoft Outlook, I will always run and search for the microphone located here, as seen here in the bottom right hand corner. And note, I am just now transcribing, but basically I've tapped the microphone and I cannot carry on doing both microphoning and dictating at the same time, so it muted it. But I think, as you can see, I was literally talking and it's transcribing it perfectly. And I did make mention there's a difference between the engine that drives dictation and the one that you may be using with Siri and other assistants. So if you notice the accuracy is better doing this, you would be correct, but just a little something to take away. And you can go back and make the necessary adjustments and or spelling corrections as needed. But that's what I generally use, and yes, I still do like a keyboard though as a reference point when doing things. It's not quick and easy to get to a force quit or a Control-Alt-Delete on this. Well, here we go. Here is a stock standard MacBook. Really nothing very fancy, just stock standard. And as you can see, it's the traditional keyboard, which we all know and love. Yes, it's illuminated. Yes, it's the flat style Mac one, and one that most people will be very used to. Up to and including, I am going to, and based on the pricing as well, include this rather scungy looking one here, which of course is the desktop one that people may have got with their 27-inch iMacs or all the rest of them. And we've been using this style for the best part of about 15 years now, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, the new one's a little more squared off, but the general format is the same. Obviously, it's a lot cleaner. They're obviously wireless as well. They're not wired. This is one of the older school ones where you just slide the AA batteries into it and away you go. And you only need to change them on average in the keyboard, for me, once a year, if that. So the whole idea is here, that's what I've based it on. The new one, of course, you charge it in with the USB cable and away you go. It's a simple keyboard. The reason why it actually lives here for me is, why don't you just get rid of it? We'll come back to in another keyboard, but I guess it's the idea that if you've got a desktop machine, and unlike the laptop, which of course you can adjust your brightness and volume and the key controls we're used to, they're here. So when I use another keyboard, I still keep this at the foot of the iMac, so if I quickly need to turn the brightness up or down as required. It's a neutral keyboard, there's nothing wrong with it. It's very functional, it's very Mac, and that's why I basically give this a score of 5. There's nothing all that amazing about it, and there's nothing all that bad with it. So that's the story, and we're basing it basically on this. No numeric keypad on the model at the moment. And for most of the videos that you've probably seen in the past couple of years, albeit from 2023 and onwards, I have been editing the videos just on this stock standard MacBook. Yes, it's an easy solution, and it's mostly because I can't be sitting here where I'd like to be doing voiceovers and all the rest. I need to just go where I can get a little bit of time to do it. As always, on this particular video, if we take a pen out, whether we're using the laptop, which we'll come to in a second, but there is somewhere to sit the pen, but it's not very defined, because if you need to use the buttons, you're easily going to bump it off, and the curved one, it falls off. And on the other one, on the newer one now, it's quite a flat, thin type of line there. Again, I would never put anything on a keyboard. It always reminds me of the chap who left his spectacle cases on the keyboard and shut it and cracked his screen. So we don't want to do any of that. So it's a functional keyboard, but it's obviously not winning me over. The keyboard feels quite reasonable. It's quite quiet. It's a nice neutral type of keyboard to have. No real complaints here. It is quick and easy. You will get used to it. Obviously your home keys have got a little notch on it, just so you know. And if we came over, of course, to the laptop itself, it's the same type of format. You'll be getting very used to this. Anyone that's used a IBM or Lenovo ThinkPad, it's one of those keyboards you just become assimilated with, and you expect nothing but that. But of course, Apple haven't always been using this type of keyboard, so unlike our wonderful ThinkPads, it's certainly not something that's gone on since day one. But let's put that aside. So is it a winner? In this instance, this is not the winner. Now we'll come to the wired Apple Mac keyboard, and it's in this instance it's USB, and of course the current model these days, it is a wireless one, but it still has the USB cable to charge it up, so you can make of that as you wish. But at the moment we'll just compare it with the actual wired one, because the new one can be wired directly as well. So it's basically the exact keyboard we did see before, which is sitting before us here. However, we now have the ability that we do have the numeric keypad, and that's obviously got to be a plus. Plus defined arrow keys, which can be useful depending if you do a lot of video editing or maybe gaming or something like that. This can be nice to have this kind of spread of delay. And of course the traditional page up and down, and of course a delete key as opposed to the traditional Mac one for just backspacing. So if you're coming from the PC world, you're going to feel very, very comfortable using this. Now, that being said, another cool little trick about this one is you also have USB ports at either end, which are great if you have a mouse and you're left or right-handed, you can plug in accordingly. And or, you know, if you needed to slide a USB stick in or something like that. Although the configuration and shaping won't get everything in there, but it is kind of handy. And unfortunately though, even though it's a good idea, plugging in some form of a USB stick or what have you can look a little bit untidy as it's sort of coming out like that. So not the best. And now we need to also appreciate that the previous model that shipped out with some of the G5 iMacs and things like that was a white keyboard, as seen in the picture here. And as a result, the 2 USB ports were featured up here. I always thought that's far more functional, but each their own. Look, again, basically, well, it is. It's the same keyboard, isn't it? It's got slightly, obviously it's a little bit, there's a bit more to it, so there's a bit more weight. It's quite solid. It does feel quite good. If you're used to coming from a full keyboard and want the Mac option, this is the way to go. It's a little bit on the expensive side. Again, it's got a few extra tricks, but if you're a Mac user, again, particularly on your shortcut keys, your volume and your brightness and that, they're right there. There's no complications, no incompatibility, no additional programming. Everything is ready for you. Because it's just a little more solider than your just 3/4 keyboard, you've got the response from the keyboard just feels a little more solid. There's a slightly different sound as you're hammering away with your keys, but you would be complaining about if you were me. That's what I would say. So it's a nice keyboard and a good way to go. But again, we need to do our official test. Pen, exactly as you saw on the previous one. There's nowhere really to sit the pen per se. And again, if you did need to spread the windows out or something, it's not quite ideal for that. So as a result, it's a Mac keyboard. What else would you expect? Nothing more, nothing less. But in my application, it's not the winner. However, if I am using a Mac, even if I'm not using the default keyboard, rest assured I'll always keep a default Apple keyboard somewhere in the vicinity, particularly for these buttons, especially if you're using an iMac or something like that. With the MacBook, it's all sort of built in. That's why it's sort of this hybrid approach as I've sort of ranked this. But that's where we are. Now we welcome the heaviest keyboard on our list today, which of course is the Ducky keyboard. This is the Bon Voyage style that we have here, and this is in my wife's studio. Of course, this is an interesting keyboard. It goes without saying. It actually is illuminated underneath, but the keycaps are not, so you're not really seeing it. But if I just dim the lights now and have a look at this quick photo, you will notice that there is illumination. You can't really see it for the most part. Now this has actually got Cherry MX white switches. I'd rather change this over to possibly a red or a clear, but we're not going to worry about that for the moment. As you can see here by this picture, we've got the USB-C connection underneath, programming switches, and of course I do like the adjustable feet from low to high as needed. Again, longer fingers, I generally would tend to keep them down and or off. It is the heaviest keyboard, as I've made mention of. We better put it through the ultimate test, and that is the pen doesn't really sit anywhere here. That's a bit too tight if you were using those keys. And sitting at the top, there's really not much of a lip to be had here. I do like our additional programming keys for volume and things like that that can be had up here. Let's give it a quick test now with the typing. The pigs or dogs, depending on your philosophical bent. Look, it's really not too bad. I must admit, coming back in on something, it's reasonably good. And of course, I am a big fan of the numeric keypad. Quite nice, but truthfully, nothing too amazing here. It is a solid keyboard. I certainly don't think you'd be too disappointed in that whatsoever. This one with freight, I'm pretty sure had come in at just on about 200, 250, somewhere around that kind of figure. I'm quite happy with the keyboard, but is this my ultimate keyboard? Unfortunately, this is a no. The Vortex Race 3. Quite fond of this keyboard. In fact, I absolutely do love this keyboard. Is it a winner from the get-go? No. Let's have a quick look at the keyboard though. First of all, we've got our 3/4 keyboard here. So no numeric pad. I'm going to lose some points on that. It is not an illuminated keyboard, although it has a series of lights underneath it to do with programming and getting it the way you want. Again, it comes with the additional keycaps, so you can have it looking as a Windows or a gaming or however you want to have the keyboard looking. This is using the Cherry MX clear keycaps underneath, and just the shape of our keycaps and that combination, this is simply the very best keyboard I have ever typed on, period. But of course, as you can see, plenty of challenges that go without saying. First of all, yes, we do have a USB-C connection to it. We really don't have any adjustment for the height, although these little feet do screw off. So you can put them on and you can adjust it if needed, but it's not quite the quick approach you might be looking for. It is quite heavy. Obviously not quite as heavy as our Ducky, but not far off of it if we had the rest of it. Very, very solid. This has obviously been configured for the Mac usage. So as a result, you'll see that we've obviously had to program and set up what would be the command key and the option keys. And they do give you the facility of giving you the delete, and delete for a Mac is actually backspacing, but they also give you an option. I've got it programmed to be the delete key for the PC style one, which I've had here. Home, page up, page down, and end again from the PC world. Very handy, but very unlikely to be used. And I do like having a full set of buttons for when I'm doing the arrows, as opposed to the Mac one that has this compacted looking up key. I cannot express to you the pleasure I get in typing with this keyboard. So much so, we'll just unplug it. I don't want to disturb the Mac at the moment. This beauty. Everything about it just has a absolutely perfect 10 out of 10 type to it that I cannot fault. Well, we don't even have to see what's going to hold this back from being the #1 today. Of course, it goes without saying, there's nowhere for me to sit the pen at all. So we lose marks there. Numeric keypad is quite handy for me, so a little disappointed about that. No additional functionality for, 10 out of 10 for the type ability. The appearance I absolutely adore, and I think the colors are truly me, as you all know me very well by now. That shade of green, oh, that pop of carpet in the model railway room, tremendous. Again, this isn't being used all that much, and its primary purpose is that this will, as we update the suite here, this will end up being the keyboard that I'm doing most of the video editing and bits and pieces on. It's lovely. Of course, I have spoken briefly before about the Logitech Creative Console, which is our little touch and editing suite that speeds things up. So again, I can quickly call up a numeric keypad from that. That's all a story for another day, but here it is. And just a little bit of a disclaimer, of course, there are a lot of keyboards these days, whether you're going for something that is mechanical, where you can change the keycaps underneath or what have you. There are lots of different things, up to ones similar to how the Logitech work ones, where we can actually personalize. We actually have what is basically a screen underneath. So, if you needed Japanese keys, or you need to change it to German, the screen changes based on basically what it is that you're doing. So we're not going to go into that, but I know there's a lot of this and personalization with the colors, the keycaps, all that other type of stuff. So I haven't gotten into this just yet. We'll talk about that in a future video, other than it somehow magically arrived before it was supposed to for me. But now these are all things in other keyboards you may be looking at. Focus, of course, is just the regular type of keyboard. Is it a winner today? Unfortunately, we're going to have the thumbs down on this one and say no. However, it is the finest typing keyboard I have ever graced my fingers upon ever. So that's a statement in itself. intimate now as we dim the lights. Now we come into the workhorse at the moment. Not by choice, but it ticked a lot of boxes for when we welcomed a new person to the world. This is the Logitech Roma. Now, this particular keyboard is a mechanical keyboard. There are plenty of variations of this. It's a very popular type of model that has so many variants. But I just want to talk quickly about this one. And the reason I've dimmed the lights has got to be this. I did want to have a backlit keyboard during the process of where our little one is sleeping in the nursery and what have you. And at the time, if I needed to zip in and do something, I didn't want to be clanking and clunking around. However, that being said, I wanted some gentle illumination so I knew where the keyboard was. It's not that I need to see all the keys, but I like the appearance. Now, it's completely customizable. This is running at about 12 to 15%, I think it's less than that, brightness. And I can bring it right up. What I don't want is this unnecessary glow that you'll see on so many illuminated keyboards underneath. I said the star attraction is me seeing what's on the screen. Anyone that's done a lot of night driving, truck drivers and things like that will know the importance of being able to dim down your instrumentation lights on the dashboard so you can see clear into the night and you're not being distracted by unnecessary things. Exactly on this. I'm not interested in red, green and blue. Illuminated keyboard is really not a deal or bust option for me. If the keyboard does happen to have illumination, as long as there's a switch to turn it off, that generally is my preference. However, I know a lot of people like to go that way. But I think you can see as I've got this, this has been brought down to the level I absolutely like. And it does look quite inviting. It's not distracting. The keys just look neutral and like they would if the lights were on, albeit the lights are actually off. And it's quite approachable. So fantastic. Let's get some lights back on again, shall we? So as you can see, it's had its fair bit of usage in the traditional shape of dirt and grime marks that I can clearly see on this spacebar, on the spacebar, and the one further up behind me are all key evidences I've been using the keyboard. I'm not going to go too much into that, but the flip side is day-to-day emails and all of this at the moment does what I need to do. This keyboard will be getting changed out later on. At the moment, it's still meeting the requirements, but a few things about it. Absolutely solid build as you would expect. All the key things are there. Of course, caps lock light, absolutely invaluable. I really think that's lacking on some others like the Vortex Race 3, although it does do a little illumination. I did forget to point out, you may be able to see it, it does light up in the back, but because it's not a clear keycap, but it's enough to let you know, which I think is nice. As we carry on though, standard PC type of keyboard, there's nothing too fancy here. The illumination cannot be controlled directly from the keyboard as you have on others. You can usually cycle through a button to change the color on that. None of that. You'll have to be using the Logitech software to achieve that. Look, it is a great keyboard. We also do need to point out the fact that it does have on it the additional, just the one USB across the top here. It's very functional, and what I actually have plugged into it is a microphone because I do like the ability, if I'm using an assistant like Siri or Cortana or whatever you're using, I like the mic to be there as I spend most of my time dictating. The only downside I have with it is the key feel is not too bad. Again, this is a proprietary Logitech mechanical keyboard, so these aren't replaceable keymecks you can put underneath it. Well, it's a great keyboard and it has a reasonably good feel. The noise is not too bad, a little bit of click but not much. Pigs or dogs, depending on your philosophical bent. I guess the most common feature. Sounds good. It's fantastic, but it does sound a little bit there's a tinny echo that comes from the frame of the machine. It's not very deadened, so to speak. I'm not saying you're coming in hitting it at that type of level, but even after a while there's a slight ring in your ear as you're coming off the keycaps. If you get nice and gentle, it's not really so bad. However, you still will be very much aware of it. So it's a great keyboard. Again, the pen test, let's have a quick look at that. It doesn't really go here, and the lip on the top is pretty minimal. Look, I'm not gonna lie, most of the time you will usually catch, I will have a pen usually set up in a position that I'm not using much of the keyboard, which is generally about here. You can see heavy usage on the backspace, and of course on the at keys and exclamation, reasonably heavily used. As a result, it's not so bad, but it's got its own downsides. And again, I think one of the key things that probably is this is the only keyboard that affects it, is I think the lighting could have been better controlled if it had the lip on it. Now, it might not seem like a big deal when we look at it at a profile like this, but unfortunately, if you are using, for example, a wired mouse or something, it can get caught in and then you can't use the key. So as a result, that can be a little bit frustrating. A few papers could be on the desk at the time, something happens and you're wondering what's going on. So a little bit of a howdy-doody, but it was purchased for that dim lighting and it has served its purpose very well. It still is a good keyboard and certainly worth checking out that type of model. It's an absolute value for money, bang for the bucks. Logitech know how to get things right, but this is the only offering on the list from Logitech, but a reasonably good keyboard. But is this the winner? Oh, no pen. Yes, I like the microphone with a USB up there, but unfortunately, this one's gonna be a no on this one. Now we have the IBM, and or as it is now, Lenovo. This is a USB keyboard. This is a full size, they call it the Pro, but it's the KB 1021. This is your traditional keyboard in every sense of the word. It's a keyboard. You can't get any more plain, clear, simple, and logical. Plenty of variations of it, and obviously with different languages and all the rest of it, but this has got to be the most recognizable and most iconic of all keyboards ever seen. Just like your good old Toyota, why change something that's been working so well for years? And that is exactly what we have here. There's no fancy bells or whistles with this particular keyboard, but it absolutely operates, types, and works and looks the way a good keyboard should look. These things will outlive most of us. I have one of my older ones, which is still going strong after many, many years and now lives in the shed on another machine doing other things. It's still going. There's no problems whatsoever. Keep blowing the dust out of it and they're almost impossible to kill for the most part. Again, nice, clear, simple caps lock. We've got our num lock and scroll lock lights respectively across the top. The function keys as needed. We've got our numeric keyboard. It's hardwired. If we have a quick look on the underside, they even give you some routes if you decide that you want to run the wire accordingly depending on the layout of what you need. This one is just a new one. This is my default keyboard I provide to all clients no matter what. It is a wired keyboard, of course. We have the quick adjustment for the two different heights as required there. It's really a bread and butter keyboard with no fancy bells or whistles. I'm not a big fan with my longer fingers. I've never been a big fan, and Microsoft were the key keyboards I was using. If we go all the way back again into the 90s, I loved a good Microsoft keyboard. I was never a big fan of the palm rest that they had across the bottom. Most of them can be disconnected and gotten rid of. This is a default one there. It's not ideal because just the way I type, it just keeps bumping on it, and I would prefer a sharper, steeper angle, which is once again, while we came back to that particular Logitech one, I 100% get that. This is a better angle and attack for me using that type of keyboard. However, that being said though, there's really not much else to say. It's a fantastic keyboard. A quick type. And what else can I say about this beauty? It's not completely silent, but it absorbs a lot of the noise that happens. So if you're in a busy environment, which is generally where these sort of things end up being deployed, it's nice and neutral so you don't hear all that noise. So it brings down that room clatter as required. All the keys just feel like they're meant to be as you carry on and do things. Everything feels absolutely natural, and anyone that's used a computer in the past 50 years or thereabouts will feel absolutely at home with this keyboard. Really is designed that even after heavy usage, you're not going to have fading keycaps like other models. Really is solid. And I guess we've got to give it the ultimate test here. It even has somewhere to sit your pen. I think that's the only one on the list that actually has that. And maybe it's not there, maybe it's to sit your stylus or something else, but very useful. Some other variants did have some additional programmable, IBM did have some the traditional red, green, yellow and blue function keys you could program at the top on some versions. I'm sure that still actually exists, but otherwise it's a beautiful place to sit your pen, and certainly at the price point these can be had, and for most people this really is the #1 choice for me. I cannot give it a 100% 10 out of 10, and anyone that knows me knows there's very few things in my life that I could ever give a 10 out of 10 to, other than at the moment the only things that top that list would be Smith's cheese and onion potato chips in Australia, and probably Red Rock Deli sour cream and sweet chili, along with Smith's original, which are of course the epitome, the Mount Olympus, the 10 out of 10s. But when it comes to something like this, perhaps, I don't know what it could be that could make it even better, other than that lip being removed, but something about it feels like there's still something that could really make it more Josef proof. In the meantime though, that's it. Da-da-da-da, and here are the results. Yes, indeed, feel free to pause the video at any point in time here, but just really quickly, it's a bit of a no-brainer as to how it all sort of scored out. I'm not using any official tallies or ranking them on other things that other people do. It's just a light-hearted look at how I use them, but it's quite clear all of these are great keyboards, and in the year 2025, as this is being shot, there are plenty of other things, but that price point for what you get, that's a solid keyboard if you can find it. The rest, if you want to spend more and you like your lights and things like that, go for it. But for me, we hone in here directly on our wonderful IBM/Lenovo, since the rights have now gone that way, and it's for the KB 1021. I rated a 9, and at $35 delivered, it's very great value. Well, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, from keyboard to foam board. As you can see, we're back in the model railway room. I am getting stuck into our foam board for our fiddle yard. I've also got the foam board going on as we're commencing our faulty tower situation at the moment, which seems like it will eventually be done one day. But of course, that now does it. Some surprises with the keyboards. I think you will agree that it's not just from a price perspective, but it's amazing that really sometimes I just like something simple in my life. It's hard to believe for many of you, but it is true. Whether it be the vehicle that I drive, whether it's the keyboard that I use, I do like simplicity in my life. A good idea is, of course, timeless. It's reliable, it's practical, and it fits the application that I, as a human being in this world, actually need. Of course, this keyboard was purchased online. If you just do a bit of a dig around, you'll find it on many different sites. It may not be the one when you walk into your popular type of store you're going to find, any more than you just don't really buy a ThinkPad from an actual store. People that know the difference between using a ThinkPad and a Lenovo laptop know exactly what I'm talking about here. And sometimes you've got to go a little bit on the digging and the hunt to find it. But if you know what you need, just like anything in this model railway room, we will get there in the end, no matter how much of a search we have to find. But finding an absolute winner and sticking to it pays off in the long run. So just like those that have stayed on this journey on my model railway and toy room, we have so much more to cover. Who knows what's going to come up in the next one, but rest assured we're back to the model railway soon, back to the model airport soon, and we've got Hot Wheels and Matchboxes coming out of my ears that I still need to start a whole other journey on. In the meantime, as always, please do stay safe, and I'll look forward to seeing you in that next one. Toodles!